Alright, welcome back. So now what we're going to do is, now that we have saved our postcard in Illustrator, we're going to export it into Photoshop. So we're going to go to File, Export, Export As. We're going to put it on our desktop. We're going to label it first name, last name, Narnia card. And we want to pick a file that we can easily open in Photoshop. So I'm going to pick a PSD and I'm going to export it. I like to have my resolution as high as it would go, so 300. And then I want to make sure that my layers are still there. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to basically write that file so that we can open it in Photoshop. You're going to have to minimize your screens, and you will have to find that onto your desktop. So mine looks like it's right here. And usually when you have something like this, it's going to be not necessarily the size that you had it earlier. So you're going to have to put it on something. So what we're going to be putting it on is a background. So again, this is a tutorial, so I have one already preloaded for you in the turn-in folder. So we're going to open up what's called this postcard background. So we're going to right click, open with, Photoshop, and we're going to do some editing with this before we do anything else. So now that this is open, we're going to convert this to a smart object. So make sure your layer panels is up. We're going to right click and we're going to convert to a smart object. And you'll see that the little icon changes telling us it's a smart object. Up at the top, we're going to go up to Filter, Sharpen, and Unsharp Mask. A window is going to pop up and you're going to change the settings to 100%. And we're going to do a 2-point radius. And we're going to change the threshold back down to 0. You can hit the preview button to see what it kind of looks like. And you're going to hit OK. We're going to add another effect. So we're going to the top where it says Filter, Stylize, Oil Paint. A window is going to appear, and sometimes you'll say something with the display driver. Just hit Continue. And we're going to modify the stylization to 1.5. And again, you can pick preferences that you like when it comes to time to making your own. And let's see, we're going to max out the others to 10. So we're just going to max out everything else to 10. And this will give your photo a painted effect and kind of mimic the hand illustrated nature of the original postcards that used to be available. So when you're done, you're going to hit OK. And then we're going to open up one of the free vintage postcard textures in Photoshop. So in the turn-in folder, I have a bunch of vintage postcard textures. I like the blank ones, and I ended up choosing number 15 for mine. So you can choose whatever one for you, and go ahead and open that in Photoshop. Once you have that image open in Photoshop, you're going to go to Image, Mode, and you're going to change it over to RGB color to convert the image from CYMK. You're going to double click on the background layer and we're going to convert it into a standard layer. So we're just going to click on this right here. Oops. So just click on that lock to convert it to standard layer. And then we're going to go ahead and switch over to the landscape. And we're going to hit Control A to select all, Control C to copy, and then we're going to paste it onto your postcard. So Control V to paste. We're going to do Control T to resize. Again, make sure you hold Shift when you're resizing things, otherwise it's going to warp. And you want it to fit inside the postcard. And you might have to resize it on the sides. It's going to warp just slightly, but that's okay. So just do that. And then when you're done with resizing, click OK or hit Enter. And you're going to drag the landscape layer below the postcard texture so that now you can only see the postcard. What we're going to do here is we're going to go on the postcard layer, so make sure that's clicked, and you're going to change the blending mode to multiply, or whatever works best for you. I liked multiply on mine. So make sure that your landscape layer is clicked, so select your landscape layer, and you're going to reduce its opacity to about 70%. So that it looks nice and vintage. Or whatever looks good to you. You want to produce a washed out effect that simulates an old vintage print. So still on the landscape layer, you're going to take the rectangular marquee tool and you're going to draw a rectangular section slightly within the postcard texture. So you're going to leave a tiny gap so that the texture can show through later. So just take that rectangular marquee tool, and just leave a tiny little gap, like so. So now that you have the rectangular marquee tool, you drew a selection around that postcard texture. Again, make sure that you're selected on that landscape. And then at the bottom of the layers panel, you're going to click Add Layer Mask. So it looks like this button right here with a piece of paper with a circle cut out. Okay? So you'll see something appeared right next to your landscape. You're going to click that layer mask thumbnail you just created in the layers panel. So click it. And at the top, you're going to go up to Filter, Distort, and Ripple. You're going to enter in about 20%, which with the large option selected. So I accidentally hit the wrong one. I go up back here again, Filter, Distort, Ripple. So again, make sure that you have about 20%. And then for your size, you want the large option. You can zoom out to see what it's going to look like. So it's going to have that ripply edge, and then you're going to click OK when you're done. So you can always go back and redo the rectangular marquee tool to get a more rippled effect. Again, depending on how close or far away you are to the postcard will depend on how rippled it is. So when you are doing the rectangular selection, you have to do it slightly within the postcard texture. So I'll go backwards so you can see it, because I went slightly out. So see how I'm slightly outward? Control D to deselect. If I go slightly inside that texture, so I'm just taking my rectangular marquee tool, go slightly within. After that, I'm going to go to Add Layer Mask, make sure that's clicked, and then Filter, distort, and ripple. Again, 20% large, and then you'll see a huge difference because I just took my rectangular marquee tool a little bit more inside. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on the postcard. So I'm going to copy pretty much everything. If you want to flatten your layers, you can. I like to have everything. So you can either copy and paste it from Illustrator into Photoshop, or you can save it and export it as a Photoshop document and open it up in there. There's many different options. So if I want everything in here, I have to make sure all my layers are clicked, and then copy and paste all of that in there. So I'm going to go step backward. You're going to have to move all of these. So I clicked both of these and I can flatten it. That's probably the easiest thing for you to do. So I'm going to flatten my image and then move it over to here. So you might have to resize, Control T. And you might have noticed that you have a white background. And you can remove that easily. You can move that layer up and then just take the magic wand and erase it, or you could save your Illustrator file as a PNG, but I'm just going to take the magic wand here and erase the white parts by hitting delete. You might have to get in there and zoom in to delete those parts that don't belong, but there are multiple ways of doing this. So I'm just going to go through and select the areas that don't belong. And again, if you make a mistake, edit, step backwards. You can also click on the white, right click, and go to similar colors and hit delete. Control D to deselect. So that's another option as well. And then zoom out, and we're ready for the next part. So with the word layer selected, and I like to have those words on top, we want to kind of mix that in and make sure it looks like it belongs. We're going to make sure that we're on that correct layer and go to Image, Adjustments, and then Match Color. And we're going to turn down luminance to about 10. And then the color intensity we're going to keep at 100, and we're going to have a 0 fade. We're going to set the source selection to the name of the current document. So whatever the current thing is named. So it happens to be 15 JPEG, which is what the tag is. In the layer option, you're going to choose merged, and then this adjustment will alter the bright colors of the Illustrator artwork according to the hues of the background photo to allow these bright colors to better blend in with that vintage theme. So you can click preview to see what it was before and after, and right now it's blending in quite nicely. And when you like it, you're just going to hit OK when you're finished. So now what you're going to do is you're going to make sure you're on the text layer. So on the left hand side, the text layer. So we're on the text layer. And we're going to select the magic wand. You're going to click the first letter of the face, which is letter N. You're going to create a new layer, so it looks like a sticky note in the layers panel. And you're going to fill the selection with black using the Alt backspace shortcut. So hold Alt and then backspace. if it turns out to be another color, like mine turned out to be pink, on the left-hand side, you can just swap those colors out to be a different color. You can also paint in that color black as well. So for some reason or another, if your color doesn't turn out to be completely black, those are some of your options you can do. So after you made this black, you're going to deselect by hitting Control D, and you're going to go back to the original text layer. So go back to the original text layer. Again, you're going to go back to the magic wand and select the next face. So we're going to select the letter A, and we're going to make it black. So I looked at my colors here, and it looks like my foreground is black, my background is pink. We're going to flip that so that when I hit Alt backspace, it's black. So just make sure whatever you're doing, I use Alt backspace to get black, that no matter what, it just turns out to be black. So the main thing is when you're going and you're using the magic wand and you're doing all this stuff, you have to create a new layer every single time. So at the end, you should have multiple different letters. So if you found yourself accidentally not creating that new layer, you can just edit, step backward, make a new layer, and then Alt backspace. So every single time you do this, you should have a new layer pop up. And if you click the eyeball, you can see that new layer. So you're going to create a new layer, take the magic wand, and select the letter R. If it's not working, you have to be on that text layer. So go on the letter R, go back to that new layer, and each time you're going to make sure that you have that black spot. So again, deselect. I'm going to make a new layer, go on the text layer, magic wand, the next letter, the letter N, Alt backspace to make it black. And if you mess up, it's okay, just edit, step backward, go to your new layer, and then hit Alt backspace to make it black. And you just want to continue doing that until you have all the letters done. So again, you're going to make a new layer, go to your text layer, magic wand, the next letter, go back to your new layer, hit Alt backspace to make it black, and then repeat it one last time. So new layer, go on your text layer, magic wand the last letter, go up to your new layer, Alt backspace to make it black. So once you have all the letters done and all of them black, you should be able to see all of them in different layers. Hit Control D to deselect. So now that you have them all done, you should have a lot of different layers. So we're going to switch over to that landscape document that we had before in Photoshop, and we're going to basically change that smart object thumbnail to edit its contents. So we're going to change over here, and you'll notice that it's still a smart image, and we're basically going to replace that image with multiple different images to put inside the different letters. So I gave you guys a set of different letters. So look for the first N in Narnia, and you want to open that in Photoshop, and you just want to copy it, and you want to paste it onto your smart image, and you want to make it big enough to fill that space. how the smart image works is that it basically applied everything already for you. So hit enter when you're done resizing. And how this works is every time that you paste something in here and you go out to close that file, it's going to ask you if you want to save your changes to the Adobe Photoshop document before closing. So we're going to hit yes and save it. We're just going to call it background image, and it doesn't really matter what you call it. So we're just going to hit save and then OK. What you'll notice is that when you go back to open that file, let's see, it has this image on there. What people mess up on the most is that you have to click on the actual smart layer. So you have to double click on that smart layer and a new tab will pop up, so that when I paste it and resize it, now it will work. So resize it, hit enter. You're going to click outside that tab, hit yes, and go ahead and delete that layer that we messed up on earlier. So now you'll see the smart image there. So what you're going to do is you're going to do Control C, and then you're going to do Control V onto that image. And what you're going to do is you're going to position the layer above the first letter of your word. So I'm going to move layer 9 above to layer 3, which is my N. And you want to move it to where you want it to be. And then this is how it works. You want to hold the Alt key on your keyboard, and you'll see this little symbol with an arrow in a box, and you want to hover just between the line of layer 9 and layer 3. So the letter N and your first background, and click it. What happens is that it automatically clips it and it looks super cool. So you can take the move tool and move it around, and you can actually hit Control T and fit more of that stuff in your letter, and it's actually pretty easy to do. And again, whenever you're resizing, make sure you hold Shift. Whenever you're done, you're going to hit OK or Enter, and then you're just going to repeat the same steps in order to fill the rest of the letters. So I'm going to click out of Old Images, and I'm going to make sure that my smart image is up, and I'm going to find the next letter in my Turn In folder. So we need the next image, and we're going to open it with Photoshop, and we're going to copy it, and we're going to double click on the smart image so that a new tab pops up. We're going to paste it and make it larger by hitting Control T. Enter when you're done resizing. And because this is a smart image, we can close out on the tab. We're going to hit save, and you'll see it pop up in the new smart image. Now that it's already converted, we're going to copy it. So Control A, Control C, and we're going to go back to our postcard, Control V to paste, and we're going to move that layer right above the letter A in Narnia. So in order to make a clipping mask, we're going to hold Alt and hover between the letter A and the new background we want, and click it. And then it's super pixelated right now, so I got to hit Control T, hold Shift to resize, And we can fit a lot of information in that one tiny space. And you want to strategically place it in an interesting location. And you want to fill that letter entirely. When you're done, hit OK. You can close out on any old images. And we're ready for the next letter. So the next letter we need is the R in Narnia. We're going to open it with Photoshop. We're going to copy it, and we're going to open up the smart image. So we have to double click on it, paste it, make it larger, and it's okay if it doesn't fill the whole space, as you might have found out. When we're done, we close out on the smart image and we have to hit save. And then it'll bring us to the smart image location. And we're just going to copy and paste it into our postcard. We want to make sure that layer is above the letter we want it to be in. Hold Alt and hover over the letter R in the current picture we want it to be in. And then click, Control to resize. You might have to zoom out to resize this one. Oh, if you accidentally click the wrong layer, that's okay. Just step backward. Control T to resize. And again, you can fit a lot of information into these letters as you are doing them. So there's my R. I can click out of my old pictures, and I'm ready for my N. So I'm going to get my second N and open it with Photoshop. Copy it. Double click on my smart image and a new tab will appear. Paste it. And again, resize it to make sure it fits. Exit out of the tab and hit save. Your new image will appear on the smart image. We're going to copy it, paste it onto our postcard. Make sure that it is above the letter you want it to be in. Hold Alt, click in between the layers, and then resize to make sure enough information falls in that N. And you want a good amount of information in there. When you're done, click OK. And then we have 2 more letters to go. So what you're going to do now is you're going to get the I, open with Photoshop, and this should feel pretty repetitive. You're going to copy it. You can close out of old tabs. You're going to double click on the smart image icon, paste it, resize it, hit OK. And again, it doesn't have to fill that whole space. Close out and hit save. It'll open up that smart image. There it is. Copy it, paste it, and you want it to be above the layer you want the letter to be in. Hold Alt, click in between the layers, and then resize it. You might have to zoom out to get it to fit in there. Hit OK when you're done. We're ready for our last letter. So let's see, last A in Narnia. We're going to open with Photoshop. We're going to copy it. You can close out of old ones. We're going to double click on the smart image icon, and it's going to open a new tab. You're going to paste your image. Again, it doesn't have to fill the whole thing. Pulling a close out of that tab and hit save. Copy it. And because we don't need this anymore, you can completely close out of it if you want. We're going to paste it, and we're going to put it on the layer right above the letter we want to put it in. Hold Alt, hover in between the layers, click it so that it makes a clipping mask. Control T to resize. You want to fit a good amount of information in that letter. When you're done, hit OK. And pretty much you are done with all of the letters now. So now that we're pretty much getting close down to the final stages, we're just going to make the design a little more authentically vintage, and we're just going to add a little grain to the work. So we're going to add an extra layer to the very, very top, and then we're going to go to Edit and Fill. We're going to go and choose about 50% gray, and then we're going to hit OK. What that is going to do is it's going to cover your whole piece in gray. And then we're going to go up to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. The amount that we want is about 10%, but again, you can tweak it to your liking. And then we're going to choose Croissant and Monochromatic. When you're done, hit OK. And it's still gray, now it's speckly. And we're going to choose the blending mode of this gray noise layer to overlay, or whatever works best for you. So here's overlay. And it's super grainy right now, so we got to reduce the opacity to tone down the impact of the graininess. So I'm going to choose about 60%. But again, that's whatever you like to your liking. Now what you can do is you can go to different various layers and adjust things as needed for finishing touches. So for example, if layer 12 is too bright for you, you can turn it down. You can pretty much turn anything down, change the color of anything, but you want to add those finishing touches so that it stands out the way you want. And that's it.